let's move on then to economy. And well, the news from Russia then is that interest rates have been put up to 8.5%. That's an increase, of 100 basis points. This is a statement from the governor of the Russian central bank. At the next meetings, this is a poor translation, but basically at the next meeting, they're admitting that they're going to potentially increase rates even further. The increase in domestic demand surpasses the capacity to expand production, she said, including due to the limited availability of labor resources. And this is an interesting thing economically, David, that it's not just the West and not just the UK that's having trouble, or the UK and the United States having trouble filling jobs. And this has got to be a pretty fundamental issue with economies in the next couple of decades, because certainly it's going to drive migration perhaps, but in the meantime, our birth rate is too low.
Birth rate is too low. In the West, we're killing between a quarter and a third of all the children in the womb. And we are constructing an economy that has people so struggling to survive that large families seem impossible. So there are many reasons why the birth rate is too low, but it's not sustainable. It's the very definition of not sustainable. We're going to have more and more people depending on fewer and fewer actual productive workers.
Yes, and what's interesting is, of course, governor of a central bank, they have the same rhetoric the world over, so it doesn't matter that Russia has a much better productive economy than, for example, the UK. They're still only thinking about interest rates in monetarist terms.
Yes, and it's by no means obvious that putting up interest rates will do anything to improve the labour pool, because if you need a certain amount of stuff, you want to make your economy more productive. So you need more investment, more plant and machinery to make each individual worker produce more. So by putting up interest rates, they're going to reduce investment in plant and machinery, not necessarily working to the end they claim.
No, indeed. Okay, well, let's move to India then, and a bit of news here that the Indian government has decided that they are going to ban the export of non-Basmati white rice. Now, of course, we're hearing lots of rhetoric from various people about the fact that the Odessa bombings by the Russians are going to cause a global food crisis. But in fact, this is just another example of it. Now, in this case, they're saying it's because they have reduced harvests this year and they have to make sure that they've got sufficient supply for domestic markets. There's been huge demand from the rest of the world for Indian rice. So let's see, what was it? 20? So first of all, they put a 20% duty on, a tariff on, in an effort to get people to stop buying Indian rice from foreign countries, but in fact that didn't work. So they've just put a ban on it. In the meantime, of course, wheat prices. Well, the headlines are saying wheat prices are heading north again. They are a little bit, if you look at the very far right-hand side of that graph, nowhere near the kind of peaks we saw in mid-2022. But certainly wheat that's to be delivered in May 2024, what's that, sitting around the 220 mark or so for the price per tonne, 220 pounds per tonne. So it has gone up slightly, but not quite to the degree that the mainstream media is perhaps suggesting. But in the meantime, of course, we're not seeing the falls. If we look at that graph again, we're not seeing the relatively massive fall in price being reflected in retail prices in the supermarkets. So that's a separate issue. So that's a little bit of a look at economic issues at the moment. But David, this issue of global food supplies, I mean, Patrick was talking about this on Friday. In fact, the impact of the Ukrainian situation isn't going to have a terribly great impact on third world countries or developing countries because most of Ukrainian grain was going to Europe. But Indian rice, lots of it coming to Europe and the United States as well. The fundamental problem here is that we have no food independence.
Well, that's certainly a risk. If international trade breaks down, then we are in a bad way. The impact of the wheat price spike and the supply disruption from the Ukraine was never as great as it was being advertised. I was speaking to people in the industry importing wheat into the UK to make bread, to make flour and to make bread. And they were remarkably relaxed about this whole thing. They said, no, there's plenty of supply. Yeah, we've got to pay a bit more for it, but there's plenty of supply. So it didn't seem to be the crisis it was being advertised as, even in the worst moments.
Yes. Well, in the meantime, we've got a couple of little graphics here on CBDC.
Yes, I just want to emphasize the fact that people are getting this, both protesters, ordinary people on the ground, and indeed the cartoonists and the comedians in the mainstream. They are understanding what's happening here. So we see a protester here absolutely nailing what central bank digital currency is, right? So all your spending monitored forever, and the eyes are watching you. And it says cashesfreedom.uk is presumably a web URL or something there. So this is spot on. And even in the mainstream, partly because of the Nigel Farage issues and all that's come out surrounding it, they realise that Big Banker is watching you. It's not Big Brother, it's Big Banker. And this is, if anything's scarier, with your conduct, your opinions, your beliefs, your expressed views being assessed by your banker as to whether you're going to be allowed to have any economic activity, whether you're going to be allowed to buy and sell in this society. That's a very dark area to be going down. That's where we're heading.
It is indeed. Okay, thank you for that.